Wednesday night.
Right?
Now it's official. We kicked it off, and we're here, and it's just the way it works out. But I see we're the second Tech Talk show that's live now. The first Tech Talk show is going to answer no tech questions,
Oh, that's
but
right. Right? Yeah.
yeah, but
Ever.
here we are. It's
Yeah.
another Wednesday night, and it's the best Wednesday night. It's like I feel like it's a new world today.
The air smelled fresher this morning. Like just everything was just better this morning. Like it's
Yeah, well, not yet, but the I'm sure my grocery bill will be a little bit better this coming month,
yeah.
or a little bit more palatable. So, yeah, we get the Wednesday night rolling like normal. So there's only 17 in here, and I imagine it's because we got undercut by the other show. But we'll see. Don English is in here, the One-Eyed Cat, Buff Del Campo, of course, Slant Daily Garage, Junkyard D, Mr. John Wilburn, the one and only Mr. John Wilburn. Let's see, Michael Schmidt, Mama M3, Fab Race Mod Repeat, hello from Northeast Dragway, he says, and Val 360 Jimmy. Val 360 Jimmy says he doesn't look that orange anymore, must have changed his tanning spray brands. I did that on purpose so it was obvious what the picture was. But I had to
It was
make Professor
classic.
P quite orange.
I literally laughed out loud on that one. That was good.
Yeah, and John wants to remind you that Orange Man bad, orange paper good. So just, right around December the 31st, they should start seeing some orange papers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, who's going to PRI? Who's going to PRI this year? Are you going? You gonna go? You gonna make it? I know John's going. Are you gonna make it, Dallas?
Me?
Yeah. Are you gonna make it PRI?
Probably. I'm not. I have no intention of going.
Got it.
Yeah. Let's see. So Turbo Tom popped in, and Mama M3 says, "Tech question: what's the number one killer of stock turbos? 07 Mazda CX-7 2.3.
Oil starvation, or crap getting into it. Those are two actually.
Mm-hmm. The new turbos, anything made past like
that's 07. So
that's not too new.
That's right. That's why I went to those two exactly.
Okay, so somewhere around, it had to be somewhere close to 06, 07 is when they started coming out with variable vane turbos.
Mm-hmm.
Those things get clogged up by emissions like
carbon.
And then they can't move correctly. And then the problem, it doesn't throw any codes or anything. It's just down on power. And that's because the pitch of the vane of the turbo is stuck generally like closed or half open.
Yeah, wherever it's resting at. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they have no balls. But the good thing is all you do is pull the exducer housing, and you clean it all off real good with some freaking carb cleaner or brake cleaner or whatever you want to use, and make sure it moves fairly easy then, because I believe those move with the computer does it. It controls it through a solenoid, and I think it may use oil pressure to move it. I'm not sure. But if it does not have a variable vane turbo, just start looking at bearings and the passage, because they'll have like a small little oil line that comes up from like generally the feed side of the pump right to the turbo itself. And what happens is over a period of time, that steel line that comes up to the turbo to feed oil will generally get hot. When you shut the engine off, it's still like, let's say it's 220 degrees, and you shut it off and heat rises, right? Well, generally they're fed oil from the top and then they drain through the bottom. Okay. And when you shut them off, heat rises from the turbo. So remember, you got the exhaust side of the turbo. Heat rises up through that tube, and it bakes the oil inside that tube. And then the interior of that tube passage ends up becoming just like a carbon plug passage, and it gets no oil, and it ends up smoking the bearings in the turbo.
It's like a carbon butt plug.
Carbon butt plug.
Yeah.
Yes, only fed from the top and on a mechanical device.
Yes. So yeah, that's what I was going to say. Exactly what he's saying. That's the reason why they usually start from that exact reason, and that's why some of those cars from like in the early 2000s and actually some of the 1990s had turbo timers. So you would shut the car off, and the car would run for another 30 seconds. So that way it would cool the turbo. So that didn't happen.
Oh, all right. So
And one more thing, K&N filters destroy turbos.
Oh, because the dirt
Oil.
that they let in. Oh, the oil that's in
The
the
oil.
I
Yeah,
did
the
not
oil
know.
that they let in, and then the oil coats the fins, and then any dust that comes through there, instead of just it eating it, it gets on that, and puts an imbalance on it, and I've seen that quite a bit, believe it or not.
Well, she says so skipping oil changes, question mark. The oil is black and reeks of gas,
Yeah,
rolls coal and sounds like a diesel.
yeah, it's bad.
Um, no, I would say that sounds like a fuel issue. Maybe
Yeah,
like an O2 sensor, or you got bad injectors and it's had like the injectors are either plugged up or not atomizing fuel correctly.
or they're stuck wide open.
Yeah, it does not sound good. And if the oil is black, that means generally that's carbon buildup. And if
Mhm.
it reeks of gas, then it's being overfueled generally.
Yeah,
But
usually when you get too much fuel, you're going to smoke your rings. So now you have two things going on: too much fuel, you smoke the rings,
and
and then that carbon that's being blown by is actually going to the oil. So you have many things going on that are
there's
bad.
a lot of things. When you overfuel, there's a lot of things that happen. One, it smokes the
Yeah.
rings, like you said. Two, it'll glaze the cylinder walls so bad that you have to
Mhm.
actually hone it again.
Yeah.
The other thing is if it's blowing black smoke, almost guarantee that converter is fully filled with crap.
Yeah.
And the only way to fix it is really heat. You go in there and burn it out.
Yeah.
That's the only way
We
to fix that.
old was it Highway 8? That was how I cleaned out my converters.
Going up that grade.
Going up the grade, you basically go up the grade all the way up to the top to like was the golden acorn, right? And then
Hmm.
you would let it cool down, and then you would go down the backside, you would let it coast, then you come up from the desert all the way up to Hukumba, and then and man, that thing would just be cooking, and you could actually smell it cooking off the crap on it.
Huh. Well, let's go back to a question here. Um, Buick Smith asked, "Why do reverse turbo spool faster than regular direction?"
I don't know.
I don't know anything about that.
No, neither do I. But I do know that I forget the guy who is he made a mirror image turbo. So one goes one direction, one goes the other direction. So that way you don't have one coming up, and it's a very symmetrical looking type of deal. So maybe it's just because of cutting it. Um, I know it couldn't do anything with the rotation of the Earth, because I know that water goes down one direction on one hemisphere and down the other. So it's easier for it to go down one way, but that has nothing to do with the turbo. So I don't know on that one. Couldn't tell you.
That wouldn't make any sense because it's still taking
Mm-mm.
exhaust gases and it's still spooling and building pressure. So it really wouldn't be.
Any different?
I don't think it would technically be any different
No.
whatsoever.
If it's spooling faster, that means that there's a design difference between the two, not just right and left or reverse direction. There's something internally different between the two if it's doing that.
It was so. And Danny Boyd says Orange Man great, so he must be
Yeah,
looking at the thumbnail. So, John Wilburn says, while we won't announce the new stuff for the No Name Nationals until approximately 12:27, you might see a number on the orange paper sooner than later. You heard it here first. So stick
Ooh,
around for his Friday night tech talk or his Friday night lives,
yeah.
and you might get some info on it. So
And what you know what? While the people are still filtering in, guess what I got here? Just like every year, right here. This is the new product guide, 2025 new product guide. I was so busy today, I forgot my notes on this, so I'm going to have to wing it on some of these. But we might do another deep dive on this next week. We'll do a little glazing over on this, but you guys get it here first from some of the people who built those parts right in that catalog. So I'll do my best.
yeah. So Mama M3 says now the turbo is shot. We don't need cats in South Carolina.
Oh,
Okay.
okay,
Well, yeah. Fix your turbo then.
yeah.
Uh,
And fix your turbo, but I'm telling you, If it's blowing black smoke, you 100% smoke those rings at somewhere, especially if it smells like gas. So it's probably more than just changing the turbo. You're probably going to have to do some sort of honing, maybe new rings or something, because like he was saying, if you glaze those cylinders, there's nothing you're going to do to that. It's
You
done.
can't fix it.
You
Yeah,
can't fix it.
I think the only thing you can do is rehone it. Now, I have seen people do stupid stuff like not take the engine out of the car and hone it and get away with it. Um, where it's you essentially put the piston at bottom dead center. You hone that whole cylinder except for that one spot where it's sitting, and then at bottom dead center, and you do that to all 4 cylinders or 6 or 8 or whatever you got, and then fire it up and hope that's enough to rebed the rings and to recreate a cylinder wall that's functional. But still, remember, if you glaze it, still going to have that inch or so where the rings are at the bottom that's not glazed. So it can have the possibility of just refilling the crankcase full of gas. Okay, but you do want to fix whatever is the fueling issue first.
Yes, because it's just going to keep taking the shit out as it keeps going.
If you go ahead and rehone that motor or tear it apart, put rings in it, and hone it, guaranteed, if gas reeks of oil, the first thing you need to do is take the whole motor completely apart, throw away all the bearings, all the rings. Don't even look at them because it's going to be useless. There's going to be serious wear on the bearings because they don't lubricate with gas in the oil. I mean, not well. It thins out the oil. And if it's a Japanese car from 2007, let's face it, it's got 530 or 520 oil in it, or maybe 020, and then you thinned it out even more, it's absolute trash. But being a turbo engine, they usually like to have like 1030 in them to help cool the turbo.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Buick Smith says he watched a video about bore crosshatch angles wider for small versus tighter for large bores for proper ring seal. Does this apply only for moly rings or all rings?
All rings need their certain type of pattern for what the material is and the thickness. Lake Speed has a few videos on this. I mean, he knows, he does rings for, isn't it Total Seal? Doesn't he work for Total Seal?
He does, yeah.
Yeah. So watch a few of his videos, and he goes into really deep dives on this. But yeah, I don't want to say anything that would say anything against that. I know what I do. I tend to do 20 in and outs on half speed. And I'm looking for a crosshatch on the cast iron ring. I'm looking for something that's 30. I think it's 30 and 40
on a cast
years or
iron
something.
ring, you can almost get away with like just the worst hone you can possibly have.
Exactly, and that's why I take care of it. That's why I love the Slant 6 stuff, because I can just use WD-40 or ATF and just
dingle ball that sucker and throw her back together.
You got it. I love it.
Well, there's a couple of things here that's going to be coming up. We got some interesting, new, and exciting information for you guys. All right, and we'll get to it here in just a second. Okay. So Clayton's Toolbox says, is the Edelbrock VRS rated the same as the Edelbrock carbs, or is it rated like a Holly? Does a 850 CFM VRS flow like a 850 CFM Holly?
Ours are actually wet flowed, so it is an actual wet flow type of deal. I'm not sure exactly how Holly does it. I believe that they do wet flow also, but these are wet flowed. So this is, and it actually is slightly more than 850, but not much. So it's like 8. Well, I don't want to say anything. It's an 850 carb. How about that? But they're wet flowed.
Next question, Junkyard D. Shane, will there be any new DLC news released at PRI in the Mopar world? No, there won't be. But it's been released at SEMA, and that magazine that Shane has there, all the DLC lifters are available now.
There you go. If you want to pause and look, you see it right there. Can you see it?
Yeah, you can see it. So all of them are available. Chevrolet, well, GM, and then you have your Ford sizes and your Mopar sizes, and they're ready to be essentially released. So order away.
So basically, now, just to be fair, we're probably not going to be shipping anything till the first of the year. And I'm just being fair with that because we still have to get a lot of stock in, so that way when it's released, I'm getting a few sets. I'm going to put some in the I'm going to put some in my Slant 6, and I'm going to put some in the 333, 318. But just, I'm telling you right now, they are on the docket, and I'm just going to say the first of the year.
Okay, so here's a piece of wizardry information for you. Nick the
I've
Van
done
Man
this.
says, or you can pour powdered Ajax at each cylinder and fire it up. Few race teams used to do it. Yes, this is an old school trick, powdered Ajax. My grandfather used to do it with lava soap.
Yep.
You take lava soap and pour it down the freaking carburetor while it's running and make it choke on the lava soap, and it'll reseat the rings. I don't know about the cylinder walls, like taking the glazing off. It's going to be really hard to take the glazing off.
Yeah, we did this in a Volkswagen, believe it or not, Volkswagen Bug.
Well, it does
And
work. I know it does.
it
But
does work. Here's the thing, though, is that you got to get that shit out of there.
well, like the pumice that my grandfather would use, like you could see it where it was used rings and you're using it on the used block. That's a no bueno. You're supposed to like freaking put new rings on it, right?
Yeah.
And then bed them into that block. But there is ways around it. You know, you can use the pumice soap or the Ajax or rebed the rings. But the glazing on the cylinder walls, I don't think you can take it off with Ajax or pumice soap or anything like that. You're not going to get the glazing off. And if you do, it won't be even. So I don't know. John Wilburn says honing a cylinder with a piston in the bore will be demonstrated at the sorcery booth at PRI. Honed with gasoline while smoking a cigarette for authenticity.
Perfect.
Yeah.
With the shirt that's a little too small and the belly hanging out. Sounds
There
great.
Oh yeah, that's what Dust Sale Garage says. John, don't forget you have to wear a shirt 2 sizes too small.
Exactly. Brian and I think alike.
Yeah. Junkyard D's happy. I guess he got the answer for the DLC lifters. So yeah, there you go, buddy. You can go ahead and order them up today. You have them sooner or later. I guess what would be smart is if I can call somebody I know that at Edelbrock and get them to send me a freaking set, and then we just try to trash a motor with them.
Yeah, Dallas was actually here last night, and I was showing him the camshaft that I'm going to use in the 333, and it's a billet camshaft. It's an 8620 billet camshaft. So it's and we're going to cut it down, put profiles on it for like a flat tappet for 904 lifter, and we're going to run that in that thing because I've got it. So why not?
Oh, well, I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, it's going to be bitching.
Michael Schmidt says, are there any new, interesting, improved, better, sexy, etc. one-barrel carbs for multi-carb setups?
In
not
this
book, I don't think.
Yeah, not in this catalog. Yeah. Right now it's doing 4 barrels, and we'll get to the VRSs here. What we are introducing. Well, I mean, I kind of said it a little bit one night, but the
just 950. Go ahead and say it, man.
Yeah. Well, the 950 is coming out. So we have a 950, and then we also have an E85 carburetor. See here. Where's my little page? I had all this stuff set up on my other one. Yeah.
Yeah, but you said it's an 850 E85 carburetor, correct?
Yes. Yeah, it's 850 E85. It's right here. So we have the 850 E85 coming out, and then the VRS 950, and that's new for. And then we also have a calibration kit for these, because we have a little different jets. They can accept Holley jets, but ours are actually a lot better. So we're gonna have some calibration kits, and also too some calibration tunes in there, because people are starting to put them on kind of some funky things. They pretty much run on anything. I mean, obviously, I demonstrated that with a Slant 6 that I drive all the time, and I put one on, and I drove it almost for 200 miles, and it ran great. So,
well, so here's what I'm thinking, and I mean, I guess it should be said, if the 950 is available now, and you're starting to see an E85 version, it won't be long before methanol version is available. That is kind of common sense.
I can't say yes or no to that.
Oh, I know. I'm not trying to shake you down either.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, look, buyers, if you're waiting for a methanol carburetor, chances are in 1 year you've seen them make the 950, the E85 carburetor. You can almost bet money that next year you'll probably see a methanol version of it.
Yeah. And the 950 works amazingly well. We put it on a 555 Musi big block Chevrolet, and it made just as much, if not, well, actually, I think it made more power than the 1050 Dominator. So it's a very great, it's an awesome carburetor.
Well, Buick Smith says, tech question. I
Hmm.
can understand that a bigger valve seat can carry away more heat than a smaller seat, but will a harder seat carry away less heat than a softer seat? Uh,
I
you
don't
know,
think so. No,
I
because it's a harder, it's going to be denser,
and
but
it's
it's
going
still
to transfer more heat.
it's going to
Yeah.
transfer more heat. But all that's going to do is that, with a softer seat, you're going to run lead. So therefore, because you're running lead, it's going to run cooler. So it only run cooler because of the fuel you're using
I don't know. Like,
and the
you'd have to know
lubrication.
the heat transfer rate of each one of those different
Yeah, but the density
materials.
between that is so it comes down to density of the material, and the density between those is so negligible. I mean, you're talking about, you know, a minute or two
Well,
difference in heat
okay,
transfer.
you've seen this in the world already.
Hmm.
There's two versions of the Vortec Chevrolet head,
Yeah.
right? And I don't remember what the numbers are off the top of my head, like a 062 and a 906 or something. But either way, the 906 and the 1-ton trucks had an Inconel exhaust valve seat, and they in the regular like 062s didn't have it, right?
Hmm.
And so um, they would have had two different transfer rates of heat if that was the case. And both of them seem to run just fine without even doing anything funky like beating the seats out of them, or one head is better than the other. They virtually have the same flow characteristics for each individual head. Let's see. Nick the Van Man says a tech question: camshafts for sale of discussion, two cams of the same duration, lift, LSA, and ICL, flat tappet versus roller. Beyond frictional losses, is there anything else a roller does for power?
Yeah, because you can. It depends. You're missing one variable, because you're talking about lift, lobe separation, and duration. But
And
at
then this,
what point
yeah,
duration?
this would be an area under the curve kind of thing, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing, is that you're talking about duration at 50 and advertised duration, but then you're talking about 100 and 200 as far as the lobe. That if you're dealing with an 841 lifter like a small block Chevrolet, the roller will just be light years ahead of it, because you can get so much more aggressive with a roller, because you can ramp it up. Now, when you get to a 904, there's not so much advantage on that, because you have a much bigger footprint. In fact, a lot of the racers go to a 1-inch flat tappet lifter diameter, when they can't run a roller. And then really at that point, the advantage is very negligible, because you don't need to run as much spring pressure with the flat tappet, because everything's lighter. So if you have a bigger diameter and you can get just about the same 100 and 200 and 300 as far as lobe lifter area, at those points, there is no advantage at that point, because now you're going to have frictional losses on the roller, but yet you have heavier spring pressures to compensate for all the heavier things. But then with the mechanical one, you're going to have a little bit more spring pressure because of the heavier lifter, but you don't have to have nearly the 500 or 600. You're going to be at like a 350 or 400 as far as over the nose, and your seat pressure is going to be significantly less. 120 to 150, obviously those come down to whatever the ramp rates are. That's how you get your numbers for your valve springs. But the a solid roller is going to be at like the 200 to 250 on the seat. So, but yeah, that's really where it would be. But I personally like the flat tappet cams. I I just love them because they're easier, they're cheaper, and you can change things without spending a fortune on them. You can get a camshaft for, a couple $100. Some decent lifters for about 150, and then you're rolling. As long as you break them in correctly and you use good break-in lube. That's the big key, is getting the decent break-in lube, making sure that you don't put the stuff on there and let it sit for 6 months. If you're going to assemble this thing, assemble it good lube, and start the thing within a week of you assembling it. If you're going to run a flat top, a lot of these guys let them sit, and that's the reason why they go bad. But anyways, i'm i'm
Let them sit.
i'm i'm
I
digressing.
prime them all and turn them all
Yes.
over. And
Yeah.
that's a big difference.
Yes, exactly.
But so here's my take on this, my 2
Sure.
cents. I have this sick infatuation with trying to use factory roller parts to make a roller lifter cam engine out of an engine that was never a roller lifter cam to begin with.
Mm.
So it's like my own sick thing that I want to do, like the low buck roller, right?
Yeah.
But what I learned a long time ago was when General Motors, when I started reading about it, General Motors, when they went to the roller cams in essentially like 87, right? Most of the major manufacturers went to a roller cam around that time anyway.
Mhm.
But when General Motors went to the roller cam in like 87, they explained in the article that I was reading that the camshaft spends 100% more time at 400 lift than it did previously. 100% more
That's
time.
right.
That's a hell of a lot of time.
And that is the difference, is because you didn't need to have as much lift, as far as, max lift, because you're having so much more low lift numbers. You get a head that flows at low lift like the fast burn did, and that's where you make your power. Now you don't have to be cycling these valve springs all over the place, and you would have a much longer lasting engine with a lot less spring pressure, a lot less wear and tear on parts for the exact same um, power rating, but much smaller camshaft. And then if you run something close to the other one as far as lift, you've got an engine now that makes, 20 or 30% more power with less energy exerted to do the same thing.
Well, so let's see here. Let's see. Okay. Frank Parks is saying that it's called Stromberg 97s. He was asking about the one barrel carbs.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I know what he was talking about. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But that's the way to, for him, that's the way to go. Still very cool this day, right?
For
Uh,
me, it's a Holly 1920. That's my favorite carburetor for like
Dead
one
Pedal
barrel.
Motors says, saw No Name Nationals went well from the videos. Oh, it was a really good time. It's always a good time every year, right? But it's never had a bad year so far, I don't
Mm-mm.
think.
Oh,
Um, Generally, like, I think this is the first time we've ever had rain, and it happened at, oh, I
Friday.
don't remember, was it Friday night at like
Yeah.
7 o'clock? And it was like right before they kicked off the burnout contest. And then Saturday was threats of rain the whole day, and it never rained.
No,
We ended up packing up and hauling out of there like real quickly right when it was over
because we
because
thought
it was
rain was
supposed to,
coming.
yeah, but they said it was like, oh, buckets are coming, like, oh crap, we'll load up and get out of here. And it never rained.
We
But
should just stayed.
it's like, it's very odd when it comes to the weather, um, because it has three major rivers come to a point right there at Sykeston area.
Mhm.
Okay, so essentially, Sykeston, um, Cairo, Illinois, all that stuff, it all comes together where you have the Illinois River, the Mississippi River, the Ohio River, all comes to one point. And what happens is all these clouds, these rain clouds come around, and then they hit that river, and it's such a massive body of water with such massive temperature differences. It moves the clouds and the fronts around based on how much energy is in the water, right?
Hmm.
And what's funny is when I was up and operating the AHRA on a daily basis, we'd hold events there at Sykeston, and they get rained out at Benton. And Benton is like 7 miles up the road.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the other side of the road, on the freeway. Yeah.
And they would literally drive to the track and try to catch first round when they get rained out at Benton. And it might be sunny at Sykeston. Or if you go to Benton, Illinois, which is 20 miles up the road, they might get rained out. They'll haul down to Sykeston and might be nice and sunny, right? It's always been that way. It's hard to gauge the weather, and it's really difficult to tell what's going to happen in your specific area because it doesn't make any sense. It's all the river. The river is what dictates it. And when when I was working there, essentially working with Larry Jeffers and Barclay Schmidt at Jeffers Motorsports Park, which is Sykeston. I sat down and did 100-year history on every day of operation at the track. So essentially, when they open in March till you shut down in the latest possible time in November. I did 100-year history on the probability of rain, right? Of precipitation. And the dates that we have for no name nationals is the lowest possible probability of rain in any days the year, right?
Wow.
So, like, if it rains, it's like kind of a fluke, to be honest with you. I wouldn't even leave my driveway if it was anything over 25% possibility of rain, probability of rain. And those that month, and especially the later in the month of September that it is, the better it gets. October, it starts changing the other way and it starts getting more wet, right? But it's not surprising when I tell you this, it's less than 10%.
Hmm.
So later parts of September. So that's why generally it doesn't get rained out. And what was funny is those dates that we have, if you look the year before, was when I did the Slanted Nationals. And the Slanted Nationals was on that date. And I got bit hard on the Slanted Nationals
Yeah.
because everybody started calling from Kansas and, oh my God, it's raining, it's pouring here, it's heading you guys' way, you're going to get screwed, blah, blah, blah. Nobody went, like, everybody said, oh man, you guys are going to get rained out. You know what? And it said 100% probability or possibility of rain on that day. And
Yep.
it did rain. And you know when it rained? 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. No one's
Then it was
waiting.
gone.
Yeah. Everybody was done that day already. So, yeah. Let's see. Buick Smith says, now, is there any truth to being able to run the Buicks on unleaded without issue because of the higher nickel content in the iron? Your opinion on this, please. Actually, that's a yes. I've seen where even nail heads, you don't even change out the valve seats to put hardened valve seats in them because the heads will crack. You can get away with a lot on a Buick, and there's two reasons why. One, it's a high nickel casting, so it does transfer heat better. Two, there's a ton of water right behind the seat, so it pulls a lot of the heat out and it keeps it from deforming the seat, right? That's what really deforms the seat is heat and pressure. You get a high spring pressure and you have a lot of heat as the valve is sitting there just literally smacking it to death like an anvil. It will mushroom the head of the valve and it will flatten the seat. But a Buick will not really do it. Buick, Olds, and Pontiacs are actually really good when it comes to that heat transfer out of that seat. I don't know why they're so much better than a Chevrolet, and maybe it's the Chevrolet was maybe worse material. I don't know. They were low buck, so it could have been they just had crappy valve seats in to begin with. But Fords, Chevrolets, and Mopars of like say 71 to like 78 era, they were notorious for just beating the seats to death. If you
You
didn't
know,
have
I've had really good luck on Slant Sixes because the only head that I had hardened seats on is in the green car. Every other Slant Six I've had, I've not changed the seats. I've just done a valve job myself, and I don't even run lead in them anymore.
that's what I do, and knock on
Don't care.
wood. I've never had a problem with them.
Yeah.
Now, in my opinion, I mess with a lot of Buicks. And I do have a piece of Chevrolet content coming up that you guys are going to be in awe of because I've never done this is only my second Chevrolet ever, but in all the Buick content that I've done, I have done I don't know how many valve jobs, and I have not put hardened valve seats in any of them. But the 71 455 head, and I've said this many times to people that I know that are friends, the 71 455 head is my favorite head. It has none of the emission stuff from 72 and later. It's exactly looks like a 1967 to 70 head. So it has the same heat crossovers that you can plug with just expansion plugs, and you're good to go. They have hardened valve seats. They got a little bit bigger chamber, but the 71 head is so good because you can take one of those high compression 455s or 430 or 400s that are like 10 and a quarter to 1 that you can't run on pump gas. You technically need like 110. and you can drop this 71 head on it, and the 71 head is 3 cc's or 4 cc's bigger. So it actually drops the compression from 10 and a quarter to 9 and a quarter. And it makes it to where you can run on 93 octane gas without really spending a big pile of money, without changing pistons or anything. Then you can take that same 71 head, and any of the early heads will fit on the later blocks. You can't use the later heads on the early blocks. So you can take that 71 head and put it on a 76 455. It'll have 7.6 to 1 compression. They got open chamber heads. They're garbage. You just generally take those off. You walk right over to your trash bin and you throw them in, and then you move on. You put any other head on it on a 74, 5, and 6 motor. But you put that 71 head on there, and that 7.6 to 1 turd now becomes 9 to 1, and you stab in a 70 camshaft, and you got something that's making 340 horsepower, 320 horsepower, and it will walk all over that. That's what's good about them. That's why I like the 71 head, but it'll run on unleaded gas. So, okay. Levi's backyard performance is DPM. Yeah, just not for everyone. I had my dead pedal motors. Okay, I had my typical years. So hard to complain. Dude, you just need to start running some quality parts in one of those things, man.
Just get some quality rods and some decent studs. Take care of half your shit.
Okay. Clayton's Toolbox says, since we're discussing cams, I need valve springs for a solid roller cam. The cam manufacturer recommends 210 to 250 pounds closed and 475 to 525 open. Any suggestions for springs? 7,000 RPM max.
There's too much left out. I would need to know install height, your inside diameter, your OD, there's a multitude of things that I would need. In fact,
well, you need to know the valve seal size,
everything.
Retainer. Look, okay.
There's probably 20 questions that have to be answered before.
You need to know what size valves too, and if they're stainless steel or if they're freaking hollow or if they're sodium filled. Like, there's a million things that you could do with this. Okay, I'll give you an idea. Professor P and I sat down. I had my super stock Buick, and it had good stuff on it. But I'm like, hey man, how much better would it rev if I pulled out all this weight, because it's got a triple spring in it, and I got to take 2 springs out to break it in, and I got to put 2 of them back in the thing. And then so we started talking, and we actually worked on a plan to come up with. We made a set of. We didn't make a set. We just actually found a set of springs that were beehive springs that we put together, and it was a single beehive spring. But it ended up dropping what did I end up dropping? Like 50 grams per cylinder or per valve.
And the retainer weight too.
Because the retainer got considerably smaller. Yeah. I didn't have to have all that spring pressure because I lost all that weight off the valve train. There's a lot of things you can do with that. And I went to a single beehive spring. And we revved all the way, no problem, to 7,000. But I had considerably smaller valves than probably what you got and what you're messing with, because Buick is small. It's like, the small block stuff is real small. Like it's like a Slant 6, real small valves, because it's got a small bore.
Yeah.
Okay. So John says 7% chance historically for no-name nationals weekends for rain. That's the possibility.
Pretty good.
Yeah, and that's 7% out of 100. Right? So you have a 93% probability of not raining. That's why it's good to bet the farm on that day.
Right?
Yeah. Bigfoots and Mopar says, I've got 2 440s completed and waiting to dyno, 76 440 cheap truck build, and the blown 68 440 for my Belvedere, both sitting for too long since assembly. Yeah, you'll be fine. Just prime them up. Yeah. Prime them up real good and then fire them. Stab the distributor and fire them up. So Dead Pedal Motor says it rained 0 times in October in Alabama. Yeah, and that's what you normally see. It takes a while to do. If I could All right. So after this divorce is over, and if I go to run the AHRA again, I'm going to try to do as many events as I can from like September to November. It's like that's the cash cow months. That's the ones where you don't get bit by the weather. And it wasn't that you put on poopy events. It was that you'd put on events that would get rained out. And then you'd have to make them up. So here's the thing that no one thinks of. You drive all the way there, you put on the event, you promote it, you spend a bunch of money getting everything going, and then it gets rained out. Now your initial entry for that event, you got to do it twice.
Just doubled. Yep.
Yeah, it's 100% more. So that's where it would kill you. When I first started doing AHR, the first year in June of 18, I lost $6,000 in June of 18 because of rainouts, just rainouts. And that's where I came home that year, and I'm like, okay, I got to beat this rainout issue. I can't be driving 1,500 miles and get rained out. That's just, I got so much overhead in that. And that's when I came up with the way that I determine what's the probability of rain for a date at a track. And I'm not going to tell anybody how I do it. John knows how I do it. And that's just because we did it for the No Name Nationals and I gave him probability numbers. But none of the other racing sanctioning bodies took the time to do that. They would just cut the event and that's it. You get no refunds and you move on. But I wasn't willing to do that. I was trying to find dates where it was probability. Okay. D150 says, how good were those mushroom solid lifters that Chrysler used to make for racing?
Very good.
Been like solid roller performance.
Yeah, because when you get a ramp, the edge of the foot is what limits your amount of ramp rate. So now if you have an edge on a lifter, the ramp can't go to that edge. But if you have now a curved area, which is why a roller works so well, you can be super aggressive with it. So yes, literally it comes as, if you can get one of those mushrooms, you can get really close to a solid roller performance as far as ramp rates. And sometimes even a little faster. Here's the problem with it though, is that they wear out really fast because they don't have the taper as much and they don't rotate. So literally they're for racing cams and that's about it. I wouldn't run anything for any more than, a couple thousand miles because it's going to go flat. I've actually got a set of those things, those mushroom lifters, like the real ones, the dumbbell barbell style. Yeah.
So Levi's Backyard Performance says, so where are we on this 331 class? I would like to know before PRI so I can beg a bunch of companies to give me some parts. Hey, you know what? There's a good thing about this is you don't actually have to have a bunch of freaking high-end parts to compete in this class.
That's right.
You could probably do really well in this class just using stock LS stuff and being smart with the pieces that you choose.
Yes, right.
Because there's no power adder. It's all motor. And I think that you could probably do really, really well with your stock stuff. And this is where Levi's Backyard Performance might have Levi's Backyard Performance Resurrection, because you're really going to go fast for cheap.
Yeah.
Let's see.
But we'll have the rules. The rules will be out before Thanksgiving. That's what me and Dallas promised. So I'm just writing them all up and getting them hammered out.
Okay, so Dead Pedal Motor says, does anyone care about SEMA stuff on here? Yes, especially like the new products that are being released. Those DLC coated lifters, everyone's been waiting on those for like, 18 months now or so.
Yes.
That's been a big deal. See, if you aren't aware of what that DLC coated lifter is, DLC is diamond light coating. It's used generally on wrist pins and stuff like that in NASCAR, bearings, Edelbrock Group that owns Comp, they decided to apply it to a lifter. So now your lifter won't wear like with all the ones that were going, the cams were going flat, right? There's always lubrication.
Well, actually,
diamond light coating.
Yeah, and there's actually the biggest benefit to it is that you don't have to run a cast iron cam anymore. This is the biggest benefit, is because cast iron cams, you're limited to whatever's the cast iron cam is, and you have to get those from people who've already made them. So like India or wherever. What this does is it just takes that out of the equation. You could run a round lobe cam, so you could make it whatever firing order you want. It comes in a round lobe, and then you can put whatever profile you want on it, whatever firing order, whatever you want. It is what it is, and you can recut it as many times as you want. You can have it rehardened, so it never goes away. That is what I'm trying to get at. So with the flat tappet cam, you're limited to what's on the cast iron cam. So, for instance, the cam core will have, like, this cam is good for a 400 lobe lift, 230 to 250 duration at 50. And remember, lobe separation angle is set. So you can either go from, like, say 108 to 112 on one cam. Now you have to have the exact same cam core if you wanted to go more. So if you wanted to have, like, say, a lobe separation angle. So if you wanted to go to like 114 to 116 or 118, that's a whole different cam core, even though it's still 400 lobe lift, even though it's still the same. So you can see where these cams will start to pile up. So for one Chevrolet profile that has many different lobe separation angles, you can have 5 or 6 different cam cores to fill that style of order. And that's the reason why you'll start to see, like, cams, over the counter cams, all have the same amount of lobe separation angle. It's because they're trying to limit to the amount of cores that they have to keep in stock to make those camshafts. And that's why sometimes that custom cams get so expensive, is because of the core. This just eliminates all that. So this makes it so you can basically have whatever you want.
Right. And without jumping up and down and saying everything we've done before, is literally you can have a custom billet cam core made for whatever you want. And here's the cool thing about these lifters. You don't like that cam that you had custom made? Make another custom cam, use the same lifters, drop it back in there, and you're good to go. Now your lifters have become a one-time investment, unlike before, where your lifters were matched to your cam, and every time you got a new cam, you had to change the lifters. Well, now that's not the case.
Yep.
You can get a billet cam core made, and what's cool about it, like he's saying, that he has the round lobe on it. It's literally like your duration is 360 degrees on that, right? You can put the center line anywhere you want. You can put the duration wherever you want. You can put the lobe in the area under the curve however you want, as long as it'll work with that flat tappet lifter.
That's right. Exactly. That's basically, it's NASCAR technology from the 90s that has just now trickled down to the consumer market.
Well, you know what? I think the reason why it trickled down is because it became a thing of necessity, with all these cams going flat and lifters getting freaking chewed up. This fixes that problem.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Levi's. Okay. Old McDonald says, got to set up Mopar X heads, 202 valve, knurled. Is it worth spending money on new guides, seats, etc.? Just save up for aftermarket heads.
Aftermarket head all the way, because you'll get an aluminum head. You can go 1 point more compression than that cast iron head, and it's just going to make more power, and it'll outflow those things right out of the box.
And the big one is, like, what are you trying to do here with the engine, right? If you're trying to just keep it because it's that's the stock head that was on it, then that makes it worth the money, right?
Yeah.
But if you're doing something that's like, it doesn't matter what part number heads on it or what kind of heads on it, and you're just looking for good street performance, the old heads like that are really not really worth much. They're just not
combustion chamber. Yeah, the combustion chamber is not as efficient as the newer heads, and because they're aluminum, you're going to gain just that much more performance for one more point of compression with pump gas. So you're already ahead. It's gonna flow better. Everything's just better about it.
So Shane and I have said it many times on this show. If you haven't heard it, you're going to hear it again.
Right?
If you're building a motor, the best investment that you can make is the set of cylinder heads.
That's right.
Go super conservative on the camshaft, but if you do the best cylinder heads you can afford to buy that work with your combination, that thing will always run the best.
That's right. And you don't need as big of a camshaft. You don't need anything, because you have good heads. It's going to flow well. So you can compensate for a head with camshaft, But then if you have good heads, you don't need a big cam at all. You can actually have a pretty docile cam. That's why, if you notice on the Gen 3 Hemi profiles, they're actually really small profiles. They're like 220 something, 230, and they're making 600 or 700 horsepower. To make out of an LA 600 horsepower, you're going to be up in the 250, 260 duration at 50, like on my car before I rebuilt it. It comes down to head flow, because these heads only flowed like 300 CFM, where those things are flowing close to 400 for the same about cubic inch, 400 cubic inch engines, and that's because of the head flow is why they can do that.
Yeah. But I mean, if that is something that's a numbers matching piece, spend the money, get them rebuilt, put them back on.
If it's a performance thing, then get the aftermarket heads.
Yeah. And then just bite the bullet, because if you would rebuild those heads, it probably is going to cost every bit of $600 to $800 these days.
Dude, it's $800 for a Slant 6 head.
Is it really?
Yeah. So I think it's for a set of 2 heads. I think it's like almost $1,200 now.
Well, then there you go. That's a freaking awful long ways to a good set of cylinder heads.
Yes.
Because you're almost there. Another grand, and you might be looking at something that's worthwhile. Let's see. Levi's Backyard Performance. Do you guys shift your cars, or do you have air shifters? I noticed lately by the time I shift, it's at 8,000 RPM when shift point is 7,500. I think that's what lifted the head here recently. Okay.
I shift by hand, and I always short shift 1-2. Always short shift 1-2. Because
So
back
I'm
on the
the
converter.
same way, but this past year at No Name Nationals, I was way slow on shifting it. I'd actually feel it nose over and then I'd shift. So that's my fault. And I, like he's saying, I always short shift 1-2, and it actually runs better. The ET is always better.
Yep.
And then I found when you wind out second,
That's the best.
and then that's when it runs the best.
Yep.
Because it'll drop back so far. But you got to remember, the torque multiplication goes away because the gears change, right? So when you drop it back, like say 700 RPM, but you take away that torque multiplication, it really likes when you rev it out hard, and you might go 200 past your red line, and so that way you drop it back 700 RPM, and now it's right in the meat and potatoes.
It's right on the torque. Yeah. On my car, now obviously I have a glide, but when I had the 3-speed in it, as soon as I released the button and that car came up, I was hitting second gear, and that way I was stay on the converter, so that way that stator wouldn't move, and I was getting all that torque multiplication, and then I'd run second gear out to about 7,500, and then I would hit it into third, and then I'd go through the traps at about 75, 7,700, and the car was running really good at that. It was 970s or something, whatever it was. But yeah, it ran well doing exactly that. So yeah, short shifted. And that, in fact, when I raced in the 1050 class, the second round, that car I was racing, I couldn't hear my car. So I have a shift light and I have all this stuff, but that's the one time where an air shifted shifter would help me out, because I would have beat that guy, but I didn't. I hit it, but I was late on the 1-2 shift because I couldn't hear my car, because this car was so damn loud over there.
The instigator.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, the instigator.
Clayton's Toolbox says, not enough space to answer all those spring questions. He starts laughing out loud. Is there a spring company you recommend? I will call them up. Shane just happens to work for Edelbrock Group, which is Comp Cams. I mean, you can probably call them, and they're going to help you out. It's not a problem.
Yeah. They're gonna need like installed height and stuff, and I think they have it in one of their catalogs. I think it's online where you go, and there's a bunch of questions they're going to ask you. If you have all that stuff ready to go, it's a simple deal.
Yeah. Let's see. All right. What's on 2B says, hi, Dallas and Shane. Shane, are the Slant 6 valve cover spreaders available?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We got.
All right. Well, and see, who was asking that question just a second ago? The company, was that Dead Pedal Motors? No.
Sorry, my chat went down, so I can't see any chat right now. I don't want to touch anything.
Well, who was the guy that we just answered his question? Clayton's Toolbox. So if you just message Professor P, or what was the email address? slantdailygarage@yahoo.com.
Yeah, slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. Yeah.
Okay. He can help you out with the spring thing without really getting into some technical guy's ear at comp cams and
Yeah.
try to help you in the right direction. Um, the what you told me here recently is that it's starting to become too daunting. So just expend your bullets wisely, right?
Yeah.
What son to 2B, same thing. Slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. Shane can probably hook you up with a set of with a one slant 6 valve cover spreader.
Yeah. And I'm actually working on right now the oil pan too. So that'll be cool too, because that way you'll have it on the oil pan for the Slant 6. So yeah. And I've got another thing coming too. In fact, it's being made right now. For Plan Z, I'm actually building right now the engine for it. And then I was going to take all the internals out of my bitchin', when that was in this car, my 904 with all the billet stuff in it, and put it into a Slant 6 case. But I'm actually making an adapter that's only half an inch thick. That way you can take whatever small block transmission you want and bolt it to any Slant 6 that you want. And that way you can have a stick shift. You can have 42 RE, an A500 or 904, or I can use my, very, very, very expensive 904 transmission with really bitchin' parts in it in a turbocharged Plan Z Slant 6. In fact, the transmission will probably be the most trick thing out of the whole damn car.
Levi's Backyard Performance says, I don't have a car that fits the class, but I thought of putting motor together and maybe letting someone who does borrow it. All right. So when we were talking the 333 class to begin with, I got on Facebook Marketplace where I live just to see what there was. And you got to remember, okay, this class is designed around 3,000 pounds, 333 cubes. That's where, if you were a real racer, that's what you would shoot for right there, because you can take advantage of, you could have the lightest car with the most tire you can get. Okay.
And the biggest engine.
Right?
Yep.
Now, without having all the weight penalties.
Exactly.
Right? Now, when I looked on Marketplace, there was a Vega on there. That was a small block Chevy Vega, had already been swapped, had no motor, but it had the motor mounts, the headers, and the transmission bell housing on whatever. I think it had probably that, what is it, that Saginaw 4-speed that came in them, that really lightweight thing. But I mean, you're talking, it's a Vega. It really doesn't need a lot of transmission because the car only weighs like 2,600 pounds. Okay. Now, if it was me, what I would do with that is, like, I'd build a 302 cubic inch Chevrolet small block. I'd put it in that Vega, and I would put the small tire, because you got to run, if you run less than 3,000 pounds, you got to run the 26 by 8.5 inch slick. And I'd bolt it on, and I'd freaking give it hell with that small slick, because you got a small car. It doesn't need a lot of footprint, but that's what I would do. That would be me. And I mean, I don't know what parts you got lying around, and I definitely wouldn't go spend a bunch of money to try to jump in that 333 class. But the good thing about that 333 class is an LS combination. You can literally go get your 6-liter block. You can put a 4.8 crank in it, and the thing's going to come out to 325 cubes, right? So it's ready to go. You bore it 30 over, you're at 333, and you drop that thing in something, and it's going to be a freaking missile.
But if you're going to run an LS, remember, it's going to have the factory LS valve angle for that head. So when you buy heads, you have to run a stock style valve angle head.
Yeah,
so it can't,
like LS3 head or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's got to be, an LS style stock head.
And there's no EFI. It's all carburetor, and it needs to have a distributor, right?
Yeah, well,
determined. Well, no, actually, you can use a box with an LS.
Box LS in the box with the Hemi. But we're trying to stay away from all the step retards and all that stuff, and traction control. No, basically, you can run. I'm looking. That's why I haven't finished the rules right now. Is I'm actually looking at what boxes can be done with what, and say you got to run this box because it's really only controlling timing. Then and it doesn't control anything else at that point.
Let's see.
Hey, Mr. Ron Ward is the voice of the No Name Nationals. Just showed up.
Well, I'm just catching up right now. So John Wilburn says the only reason to run X heads is for nostalgia to say you
Agreed.
have X heads. The best factory heads were TA heads based on the J head,
Hmm.
85 to 91 308 heads for the 360, and 302 heads for the 318 or Magnums.
Agreed. He couldn't have said it better. Exactly what it's exactly right there.
Let's see. Okay, so Clayton's Toolbox says I took apart an engine that was seized. It had two spun bearings. I will have it turned and all that. But if it seized like that, will that affect the heat transfer, the heat treatment on the journal?
Yes, it gets
Yeah,
blued.
it'll blue it, and then you'll probably have to have it reheat treated. But that's the heat treat only goes down what 30,000 at the most.
Yeah, but it depends on how hot it got. So, like on my Slant 6 crank, I put this rope seal on it, like an aftermarket one's supposed to be like the newfangled thing. It got so hot, it cooked it, and it put a little bluing on it. I was able to take that off with WD-40 and 1000 grit sandpaper, so it was just a surface treatment on it. So it was just the heat on it. But if it goes down deeper than that, then you're going to get flaking. So you're probably going to have it ground off and then have it reheat treated. But if it gets blue, like where it's dark blue, and you can see it not just on the bearing surface, but it's actually on like what would be the cheek of the crankshaft, it's pretty much done at that point because now it's brittle in that area.
Okay, so Buick Smith said I was going to slap on trick flow heads of my old 355 Chevy on a 327. I have the 331 class, but found out they're 18 degree. Oh well,
Mm-hmm.
back to the drawing board. Haha. Yeah, it's hard to find a good set of heads. Like the easiest thing to do for that Chevrolet small block for cost effectiveness is probably some of those trick flow 23 degrees, or they had what the fast burn aluminum heads. You
Mm-hmm.
can probably get those pretty cheap these days, and then build the motor less cubic inch. So like you're doing like 327 is the ideal thing, and then that head's going to flow even better,
Yep.
right? You want the 4-inch bore, but you want the shorter stroke. Let's see. Dust Devil Garage says, Shane, do you know anything about the 440 source stealth heads?
Mm, yeah, I do. I don't want to discuss it on the internet.
Okay. Buffdale Campbell says, win on the oil pan spreader.
I'm hoping at the first of the year. Here's the problem: is that right now at this time of the year, literally everything shuts down because everybody's at SEMA, PRI. Then you have Thanksgiving, then you have Christmas. So I'm hoping to have it before probably January. But yeah, I'll give you guys a set to try out. I'm going to try them out on this one, and as long as it fits on there good, then yeah. But I want it to fit perfect, just like the valve covers.
Levi's Backyard Performance says, I don't have any money to spend for a car, but I have several motors and would love to see someone give it a shot and have fun. Well, maybe you can do like, um, and this may sound dumb, you may not like it, but I don't know. I'm just going to throw it out there. In the very beginning of Pro Stock, you always had the two name cars, right? Like rear Morrison, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
the reason with the Sox and Martin. The reason for that is one guy would generally have the engine, the other one have the car, and they would take the two and put them together and then be out a world beater, right?
Yep.
And so that's what you should be doing is like you should be looking for Levi and Garrett,
Yeah.
to like you put a motor together, put it in somebody's car, give it hell, have fun. You guys high five when you win, and you split the winnings accordingly, whatever agreement you come up with.
That's right.
But if you look at the way pro stock was in the first few years, that's exactly how all of them were. And if you don't think that that's true, um, Jack Roush's car was not called Jack Roush's car, right? I'm just being 100% truthful there.
Yeah.
So, okay. I think we're caught up.
Wow. Look at
And
that.
we're an hour in. I'm caught up. I'm caught up. What happened? How
I
did we
don't
do
know,
this?
man.
I never do this. So,
Yeah.
um, all right. Well, I guess. Do you want to throw what's the big things in there out of that Edelbrock magazine?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So the big thing this year is obviously is the new Victor Supercharger. This thing's amazing. In fact, I know the guy who's been working on it. Really, he's been working on it for a while, and it's amazing. Basically, it's gonna they call it the Victor LS XR Supercharger. There's a whole write up on it. It's 2 pages long, and here, if you want to screenshot that, read it, and then can you see that? You can screenshot that and read it. But it's an amazing. It's got 3 intercoolers in it, so it comes through the main chamber, it goes up into the body, up into this upper plenum here, then it comes back down on the side right above the runner. So it's really efficient.
You know what would be cool with that thing is like, what's the Supercharge LS ones that came from the factory, like Supercharge, like Zeal ones?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm maybe I don't know.
I think it'd be kind of cool if you could get one of them and dyno it and just pull the blower off and put that blower on and see what it does.
Well,
Like, does it gain? Does it lose?
oh, it gains.
Oh, I'm sure it does.
Oh,
I
by
mean,
a lot.
you don't put anything on aftermarket that's worse than the factory stuff.
Yeah, I know it gains quite a bit. In fact, even our 2650 gains over that one. This one actually gains over the 2650. So this is a really great intercool supercharger. And then we also have the intercooler. So the intercooler is a bolt-on intercooler. So it bolts onto your lower plenum, and then you put your fast unit on it, or your Holly, or whatever you have. It bolts to either one of them, and then the uppers. So that way, if you have, like, say, a twin turbo, you don't have to have an intercooler. This literally bolts right on top of it. So it's a really bitchin'. It's super efficient also, and it's got twin. Oh, I forget what size they are. The dash on them. Yeah, we tested it to 1,350 horsepower at 20 psi, and we had 198 degree temperature drop. Sorry, I do have some notes in these. And then we actually have some of our ProFlow 4 electronics showing up. So these are basically controllers. What's that?
The new EFI setups?
Yes. And then, our new fast big mouth. That's it. The biggest thing about this thing is the motor on that, and how strong it is. Now, anybody, especially Levi, will know this, is that if you're running, like, say, a drive-by-wire unit, and you're putting anything over, say, 10 or 15 pounds, when you're tipping in, and that throttle blade's coming up like this, and then you're closing the throttle blade, the electric motor sometimes has trouble going against that and closing or holding it open against that boost pressure. This thing is so strong, you do not have that problem at all. It is incredibly strong. And what was cool about the testing this thing is that we were putting it in the oven and testing it in the oven, cycling it. It was pretty cool.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Let me run through some of these real quick.
Sure.
Unless you got something.
No. I'm just going through one page by page.
Yeah. I just started seeing some of these things here, and
sure.
The Buick Smith is saying the Crass and Bernie race team. So yes, the two names, and mostly old parts. Ron Ward says Jay King was the engine builder for Sox and Martin. Yes, he was. And Sox and Martin, though, like, originally I think they got their start with Chevrolet, running like a 62 Impala or 61 Impala or something, Biscayne, something like that. And then they went to Ford, and then they didn't get a deal through Ford, so they went to Mopar, and Mopar gave them a deal. But what I was getting at is just like all of those teams, when they started off and they didn't have the money to do like a full-blown team by themselves, they would pick up a partner, and you would partner, and you would pull it off. Well, Dylan Levi's got Pile Motors. He was looking for somebody with a car, and that's what I was just giving an idea of. Dylan Levi says, what's carb size rule? There is no limit on carb size. The fuel is mandated race gasoline, non-oxygenated. So it's got to be like 110, 112.
No E85, no methanol, no ethanol, nothing like that. It's got to be 110 or like a, or 112 or something like that.
Yep. Let's see here. Okay. Yes, Ron Ward gets it now. So the Stone Woods and Levi has a nice ring to it. There you go.
There you go.
Let's see. Stephen Holtz says just got finished driving the 66 Slant 6 Dart and the Zombie to the house. Oh, then
Nice.
you've got them all gathered up then.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So this is 66 starts. One of my favorite years, believe it or not. I love
So
the
Dylan
60.
Levi says he has C12, so that works. I don't know if is C12, is that oxygenated or not?
It's Q.
Okay.
Yeah, C12 is your regular stuff. So C12, C10, but then the other stuff is the Q. No.
Yeah, Dylan Levi says I can't believe no carb rule. You have to have a carburetor. That's the rule.
Yeah.
But there's no limitation on size. But see, what you're going to run into is that remember like you're not going to be able to get anything more than 368 cubes. You don't need a 1050 Dominator. I
Nope.
mean, you can put one on there. It's not going to probably use it all, but okay.
The air going through it's going to be going so slow, you're not going to get a signal to that booster. You know.
Buff Del Campo says 100 avgas. Yeah, that's fine. As long as it doesn't have oxygen or methanol in it or ethanol in it.
Well, that some of it is oxygenated. I think the dot red has oxygen in it, so I would almost just say no on the avgas because some of that has oxygen in it, depending on how high the plane goes. I think dot blue is non. I could be getting my numbers backwards, but avgas there's two different versions of it.
So John Wilburn says Ron says move over Cook. Yeah, Doug Cook, you need to hit the road, buddy. Let's see. Buick Smith says his propane build is out. Yep, you're going with the propane. We're just making it simple. Carburetors and gasoline. So I don't know. Maybe that'd be a cool shirt. Carburetors plus gasoline equals 333. I don't know.
Ron's got the next statement. He's got it nailed. Dual predators. Yeah.
Yep. That's that carburetor is so unique with the variable venturi. It's awesome.
The only problem with the Predator, I actually have Predators. The only problem with the Predator is it's got one needle and seat for every carburetor. It's got a big float bowl, but it's only got one needle and seat. So I've changed that, and there's only a few different needle and seats for them. So you can't get the big one. So you can only get like say 150. Well, imagine if you had trying to run like the Cookie Monster on like say you got a tunnel ram, you would have 4 needle and seats to feed it. Well, if you had twin Predators, you only have 2 needle and seats. And so they sometimes they run out of fuel. That's why you'll see a lot of the combinations would have like 3, like Bigfoot had 3 of them on top of the Supercharger. It was only because they couldn't keep enough fuel in those bowls for that reason. That was it.
So Dylan Levi said my thoughts was heads, carb, and compression ratio is going to be the choke point. Just my opinion. All right. Yeah. There's no limit on compression ratio. You could put 25 to 1 if you want on there, okay? But it won't run on 112 gas. You won't be able to get away with just race gas. At some point, you're going to have to run pretty much E85 or methanol to try to keep it functional. The heads, you can run pretty much whatever head you want, but it's limited to stock valve angle. So if you have let's say some really wampanoine awesome set of heads and you picked a small block Chevrolet, well, guess what? 23 degrees is all you're going to be able to run. 23 degree head. That's what they're designed with from the factory. Mopars were what, 18, 19 degree. I got lucky with my junky Buick stuff at 15 degree, but they don't have anything that could use it. So that's where the LS is going to be like the king of the king dingling in this thing. A Gen 3 Hemi, something that's really well thought out.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing is that I have 2 Predators, and John's talking about the Predators. I've always wanted to see if I could put twin floats. If I could put 2 needle and seats in one of those things, it would make a comeback for that carburetor. I promise you, because that thing is amazing. It's an amazing carburetor. And you have these fuel cams, right? So the center of it is the fuel bar, and as the flaps open, it opens against the cam, and that's what drives the fuel. So you have a 1, 2, and a 3, or some of them are A, B, and C, and then they give you a blank, and then you can grind however you want the fuel curve to come in on the Predators. So I love them because I love the tunability of them.
Okay. So Levi's Backyard Performance says, which is good. I was just thinking with today's flow numbers and possibly compression ratios, a huge carb is possible. So we're working on trying to get some, like, a little bit of uh, sponsorship essentially for our community for this kind of race class, right? There will be Professor P. Yeah, maybe Edelbrock will be throwing something in there, but Professor P is going to be assembling an engine to give away
Yeah.
for the class.
Me and Andy are going to be
Him and
putting
Andy
together.
Wood.
Yep.
And I'm sure since Andy Wood's in there, David Vizard will be really close by helping do something unique to this engine. But the idea was to build some, I don't know, some camaraderie within the community around some product providers so that you could have something that you can call uniquely your own, which is the 333 class, or the Screaming Threes, or whatever we end up calling it. But yet the manufacturers recognize it as something that can use their parts as well. There's a lot to be said about the unique builds and stuff that are done in the YouTube community. But when you use factory parts, you pretty much exclude everybody except for the Chinesium coming out of China. And this gives the American manufacturer an opportunity to give you something for your car, right?
Yeah. And Levi, one more thing too is that the blocks have to be a production based block, no aftermarket block. So it has to be a production based that came in either car or truck.
Right. So when you say, should you say stock castings, it's easy for people to, okay, I get it, but it's not easy for the tech guy too. Okay. When you say stock castings, I got to tear your motor down. I got to make sure that you got a factory cast head on it. I got to make sure you got to have a factory crank in it. And that's the stuff that we're trying to stay away from. We don't want to have to tear every single one of them down. We're just going to pump them. You have a little bit of leeway on whatever you can do. But with cylinder heads, there's so many different manufacturers. The easiest thing to do is pull the valve cover off, put a digital angle finder on the top of the valve, and guaranteed you're going to have the valve angle of the head at that exact moment, right? It's not so intrusive that you're having to tear everybody down. That's what sucks. Teardowns blow, and looking for part numbers suck. And then checking that you've only decked the block 40 thousandths. That sucks.
Yeah. Go to 38 Racing. He's asking a question here. He says, so a carbed 5.3 engine would be legal in 333 class? Yes. But you couldn't put it in a Mustang, and you can't put it in a Mopar. You have to put it in a 78 and later GM.
Right. That's what we brought up, was 78 and later GM. And that's where GM, the reason why we picked 78 is that's where they were guaranteed after the lawsuit, you could mix and match GM engines amongst the cars. Right? Anything before that, an Oldsmobile would have came in an Oldsmobile.
That's right.
A Chevrolet would have came in a Chevrolet. A Pontiac would have been a Pontiac. So you cannot throw a LS in those early engine or those early cars like that, unless it's technically it'd be a Chevrolet, right?
Yeah. So exactly. So so you couldn't put it like, say, in a like a 70 Nova. You couldn't do that.
Okay. And then Ron Ward's bringing up, yes, with an additional 9 pounds per cubic inch over 333. So
up to 368.
Right. You can go up to 368 cubes if you board it. You could even use the original 5.7 LS blocks and do the same thing with them. But whenever you get over 333 cubic inches, you're going to gain 9 pounds per cubic inch. That's just how it's going to go.
And you've got to pump. Tell them you got to pump too.
Yeah, everyone's getting pumped and everybody's getting weight. That's the easiest way to do it. And we take them up to 368 cubic inches. And what did we come up with for weight with it? 368. It was
333.12, I think is what it was. I have a calculator right here.
But the whole class is based around it's based around 333 cubic inches and 3,000 pounds. So
Yeah,
368 times 9.
yeah, 3312.
3312. So that's the most they can weigh. Now,
Yeah, that's
here's
the
the thing.
least it can weigh with that cubic inch. You can weigh more, but you can't
Oh,
be under
yes.
3012.
Yeah. That's correct. That's the least it can weigh with the
And
driver
that's
in it.
after your run. That's after your run.
Yeah, and that's you in it.
Mhm.
So you can take if you lose a few pounds, you need to really start managing your weight on that car.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so think about that. Um,
And the reason
let's
why
see.
we got 368 is so that way you can get it. The Mopar people would be, there always seem to be out with a 360. You can go 30 over on the 360 and still be legal to run in this class. That would make it 367 cubic inches in some sort.
Ron Ward says, so would 340 be legal in AMC? No,
No.
technically, or AMC would be like AMC engines only. But I guess if you went back far enough, I mean, because AMC had Buicks and Wagoneers, I don't think they ever came in their cars, though.
Well, the only thing that people group the AMCs and the Chryslers together, but there's not much in the engines that are interchangeable. They did use some 727s, but they also did use some turbo 400s. So
They also use Buick 350 and some of the
yeah,
Wagoneers and Jeep trucks. But I don't think in a Jeep car that would be acceptable, or like not a Jeep car. We did say the only four-wheel drive allowed was an AMC Eagle, right? So if you have an AMC Eagle, it better be AMC powered, and it's the only four-wheel drive car that's allowed. Let's see.
oh, yeah, that's right. I remember that. Yeah,
Yeah. Clayton's Toolbox says 5.3 LS and a Vega would kick ass in 330. Yes, it would. That's what we were talking about. Like,
yeah.
that would be a pretty, but you got to remember that little Vega is only required. I mean, because it's going to weigh less than your 3,000 pound mark. You're going to have to be mandated that 8.5 tire, that 26 by 8.5. You got to get it done in that small tire.
Yeah.
The LS can be used. It just has to be in something later than 78.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that right?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. It's not confusing. Let's see. Just build yourself something later than 78.
Yeah.
Get an S10, put a 5.3 in it. You're going to be freaking fast.
Mm-hmm. But that's only for like,
See, right here.
yeah, right. There you go. Yeah. I was waiting for you to get to that one. There you go. Right there. Exactly. But that's going to, S10s are pretty light. So you're going to have to add a lot of weight to that thing.
You don't have to add any weight as long as it meets the minimum weight for the rule. For
Yeah. But they're
how
pretty
big it
light.
is.
They're pretty light to begin with. So you
I'm
put
telling you, well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah. I'm saying when you put a 5.3 in one of those S10s, you're going to have to probably, one of the guys down here has got one and it weighs like 2,700 pounds with him in it. And he just has a roll cage on it. And I was actually shocked when we scaled it here at my house. I was like just blown away.
On how light it was.
Yeah. I was blown away.
So you'd have to weigh, if you get less than 3,000 pounds, you start losing, like, say 9 pounds. If you lost 9 pounds, you'd be 1 cubic inch less, right? It's 9 pounds per cubic inch. So the ticket, in my opinion, is not the 5.3 in an S10. Would be like a 6-liter block with a 4.8 crank that comes out to like 325 cubes. And then you would put it in a bone stock S10 with every option on the thing. But with you in it would have to weigh, 3,000 pounds ish. That would be the way to do it. So that means the truck by itself would be 2,800 pounds. That's probably right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Danny Boyd says 343 AMC. Yes, and this is why we came up with the 333 number. Was because every manufacturer had the ability to have a 333 cubic inch engine. Of course, you can get a little bit smaller, you can get a little bit bigger. And the reason why we left it broad like that is so that a lot of people could jump into it. That was the whole idea.
Some people already have a car built.
Yes, you already have an existing package. It's something simple like, well, let's put it to you this way. what is it? SSR Racing is on here. It used to be the James and James show. They got the Rusty Nova. It's got nitrous on it. All he has to do is take the nitrous off, put the converter in it that'll work with the motor, and then he's got a car to run in the class.
Yeah.
He can literally just take the nitrous off and run it, but it's the wrong combination for that class. If you're going to go naturally aspirated, you have to do a converter and all that. But
Little different gear, but half the no-name national guys could run in this class with the cars that they currently have.
Right. That was the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then Aunt D says, apparently I'm late to this live, but is this 333 class for no name? Yes, it's going to be Professor P and myself putting it together, and then we'll just run them separately. But it's going to be ran at no name nationals. And I think I talked to John, and he's just essentially just going to give us a slot, and then we can fit them in there to run heads up. But it's going to be a heads up first to the finish line, run on essentially a pro tree.
Mm-hmm.
So Ron Warren says, smiling at the AMC Eagle comment, all-wheel driving a spicy 308 with brewer heads. It would be neat to see it, right? I mean, that was why we threw it out there, was because, one, it's kind of a far-fetched idea, but two, it would be really cool to see that thing like get down big time.
Here's the one caveat though, is if someone showed up with an AMC Eagle and they actually built this thing, they can't have slicks on it. They have to drive it on DOT tires.
Because we throw that in with the rules. You know, that's what we should do, is throw that in with the rules where they can't use a drag slick.
No, they would have. That's the only way I would make it, because what he's saying right there, I know what he's talking about with those brewer heads. That thing would, it would make some power.
Trans brake allowed? Yes. You can run a trans brake in it. It doesn't matter. You can run a stick shift in it. You can run a Linko with it. It doesn't matter what your transmission option is. Yeah. And that was one of the cool things was, like, literally, as long as it had the weight to cubic inch, it didn't matter.
Yeah. As far as suspension, though, it's got to have the factory suspension points of the car. So no tubbed cars, no four-linked cars, no ladder bar cars,
no back half cars, no
back half
crew chassis. It's like legit car gets, but you can have manual steering, manual brakes, tubular A arms. But it's got to be factory suspension pickup points. You can't put coilovers on a car unless it came factory with coilovers, which is nobody. So, it's going to be, it's meant for, it's like your 28s and plates race, except for this is a legit car that's meant to be able to drive to Lambert's.
Yes. And that's the other thing too.
Yeah,
it has to be legal to drive to Lambert's and back minimum. And now I'm using the keyword minimum, because there might be a longer checkpoint. I don't know. All I'm telling you is that the minimum drive will be from here in a row. They're going to go from there to Lambert's and back as the minimum drive. There could be a more, or there might not be.
So 38 Racing, it's weighed with driver, correct? Yes, that's correct. It's weighed with the driver after you've run. Okay.
After the race.
So you literally want to put enough fuel in there to, when you make a pass, you're not going to be like light, but the idea was we wanted to do it after the pass because we want to make it random and you don't know when it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And and this is right here. If you aren't looking at a stick shift for this class, you're wrong, buddy. You're wrong. Right. Because you should be, technically what you should be doing is looking at something around 300 to 333 cubic inches with a 5-speed that came in like a shitbox car, like a Mustang 5-liter or something, that you can get a plethora of them and you can run that thing because it doesn't rob any power. And you can build it strong enough that it's going to handle it. Let's see. Buick Smith says my 65 L Special is around 2960, but that'd be perfect.
Yeah,
and then you just need to build a 300. What would be ideal in our Buick world would be like a 300 Buick that you bored to like the maximum bore, like a 3.88 inch bore. And then it would come out to like 300. What did I figure out? You needed to do it was like a 3.35 inch stroke, and then like a 3.88 inch bore came out to 333 cubes.
Yeah.
Blue Grit Garage put lead shot in the spare tire. The world is your oyster, my friend. You
Yeah.
can build it however you want, as long as
However
it
you want
fits
to do
the
it.
basic rules.
As long as when you put you on the scale, it hits that magic number, you're good.
Let's
And
see.
and when you go through tech, we're going to have when you go through tech, I'm going to have it all written down who's got what and what your engine pumps. So then we get a weight of that what it pumps, and then at the end, if someone says, "Hey, I want him weighed," we weigh you. Just have to hit that number. So it'll be a record. It won't be, oh, we got to figure it out. We'll have it all, so that way things move smoothly.
So Stephen Holtz says, I have a 68 Fairlane with a 30 over 351 Windsor. That qualifies. Correct. Yep,
Yes,
that's right.
absolutely.
Let's see. Aunt D says, is the 78 newer only for the LS? That is correct. Well, not necessarily just that. You could put a Chevrolet in a 78 Cutlass and it still would qualify. Chevrolet small block, right? Or an LS. But that LS, the reason why we did the LS, the problem with the LS is that it becomes a General Motors engine at when it comes out.
Yep.
And you're taking 2000 technology and you're throwing it at a 1960 platform. We decided to try to keep it to where anything before 1978, I believe 78 was where the ruling was, where General Motors they got sued, see, because they were putting Chevrolets and Oldsmobiles and stuff like that, and people were getting pissed off because they bought an Oldsmobile. They wanted an Oldsmobile, right? And so they sued General Motors, and well, they determined that they can literally put any one of their engines in their cars, but it didn't come mandated until 1978. So if you look at like 78, there's Chevrolets and Oldsmobiles and trucks, and I mean it was a whole bunch of stuff all over the place. But so that carried on until they got rid of all those platforms and they came out with the standard GM engines, which would have been your LS series, your 3800 Buick.
What John's saying is what he's trying to say is that John puts it out. In other words, BOP crossbreeding is allowed after 1978.
1978.
Yep.
Oh, all right. Dust Devil says, does the trans have to be the same make as the car? No.
No. Only the engine and the car. Trans and rear end can be all different.
Ron Ward asks, sorry if I missed it, but are imports allowed?
No, not this year, because I haven't found a way to make it fair for them with everybody else as of right now. If time allowed and I'm able to figure out a way, because I raced a lot of Hondas, but I don't know what the cubic inch or the liter at that point for them and the weight would be allowed, and where would the VTEC be allowed, where would the different
rotary
options
fit? I mean,
yeah, where does the rotary fit? Because but I like your thinking, because I was actually going down that road in my brain, but I just it got too convoluted. So
we
I
tried to
think for
keep it
this year,
simple for the first year,
yeah,
and make it broad and fit like pretty much what everybody has a no-name national.
yeah. And I would like 6 cylinders at some point, but for right now, I think we're just going to have it for V8s, just for this first year, because most of the people in this chat who show up in their own nationals, I'd say 90% of them will have a car that could fit in this class.
And then John saying Lambert's is 5.9 miles from the track and 45 miles per hour for those wondering. So they are going to have like a cruise, and it's going to be police escorted, and they're not really going to care how loud or nasty or whatever you got going on. As long as you drive there to Lambert's, park, do the car show, and drive back to the track. You don't run and get a case of beer and pick up your kids from school and in your car that's technically not legal.
Yeah. Danny Boyd was saying something here. He goes, so a 1985 Celica with a Lexus V8? No, it's got to be a pushrod engine. Like I said, we're going to have all the rules come out, but it's got to be a pushrod engine for this year.
So Dylan Levi, so we can run newer cars. Yes, you can run newer cars. If I was you and I was looking for something to run in this thing, I'm telling you, man, I would be looking for a 79 Monza, and I would be putting a freaking LS in it. That's exactly what I'd be looking for.
Or a Dodge D50 for a Hemi. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. Or well, I mean, you could do the same thing, Chevy Love or an S10
Yeah.
pickup, or man, I'm telling you, there's going to be some combos that are going to show up, and they're just going to be very hard to beat to begin with.
Yeah. And and we'll cross that bridge when it gets there. But obviously, the ringers are gonna and hammers are gonna come about. And we'll figure out at that point what we do with that at that time.
Okay. Danny Boyd says Toyota NASCAR V8 then. I
No,
don't
because
know if the Toyota, like,
no,
it has to
they,
be a
they,
push rod engine.
and no, it has to be a factory production block. So that just
Oh,
takes that out.
NASCAR. He's talking about the NASCAR block.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, it's got to be a factory production style block. So that's why that just takes out all the NASCAR stuff. That takes out all that stuff right off the bat. It's just got to be a factory production block that came in a car or truck at some point for
you know
that
what?
manufacturer.
I'm really eager to see. You remember like those um, 78 Challenger, that was based off the
Mhm.
Mitsubishis and stuff.
Yep.
Those with a freaking Gen 3 Hemi would be badass. They
I
made really good looking, like the Colts and all that. They made
oh yeah.
really good looking pro stockers back in the day. And it'd be
Mhm.
really cool with like a Gen 3 Hemi in it.
I'm telling you, I think a Dodge D50 with a Gen 3 Hemi would be pretty fun.
Okay, so Danny Boyd said, what about those first year Pontiac 326? Every engine, even though it's whatever it says it is, it's getting pumped. And that's
Mhm.
the number that's being used based on the weight.
That's right.
The engine's getting pumped. Okay, we have a P&G pump. I already own it. We bought it for the AHRA to run weight to cubic inch classes, and we just have never used it. So we'll pump it, and we'll tell you exactly how big it is. We randomly choose the cylinder, so don't be 60 over bore in one cylinder and standard bore in other shit. So we'll catch you because we're going to randomly choose the cylinder. And then whatever it pumps, we're just taking it by 8. So that's how big it is.
Yep.
But Ron Ward saying Wagon with a 331 and a G-force would be a very tough combination. Just like I think the first couple year Fox body, like Fairmont with a 331 and a 5-speed would really be tough to beat too. Let's see. 38 Racing says, Dallas, how could you de-stroke a 455 Buick to be legal? Any advantage? I can make a 400 Buick legal and get it down to 364 cubes. Advantages, probably not too many. When you get the big block Buick, when you get it down to small cubic inch size, it loses all of its torque characteristics, and then you got to wind it up to the moon. They don't like to be at the moon. They don't handle well. Like they eat main bearings at 5,500 now, so you take it up to 7,500. It's going to be a pretty ugly situation. It would be fun to try to figure it out though and make it work. Let's see what else we got here. Danny Boyd saying, or a Starion. Well, the Starion would fall under the Mitsubishi, which would be a foreign car, which you couldn't
Exactly.
But see,
Believe me, everything you guys
yeah,
are talking about is what we in Dallas have already talked about. We've had hours of conversation about this right here.
right. But see, this is where the cars like this D50 and the Arrow and the what was the other one? The one I said earlier,
Starion.
the Colts and stuff
Colts,
like
yeah.
that. Those were sold by American Automotive. Okay, if it was me and I was going to go run this class and I was going to put something together, I would put together an Opel Kadett with a 300 cubic inch Buick that's about 312 cubic inch, and probably like if I could get away with a T5, I would try that, but I don't think I could. And then I would come whip everybody's ass. It would be definitely interesting. The Opel Kadett I could probably do because they sold it as a Buick, but I don't know. It's a foreign car.
Right? Buff, my very first vehicle I ever owned was a Dodge D50. And then they came with two engines, the 2.0 and the 2.6. The 2.0 was a Mitsubishi engine, but the 2.6 was the big block, and it had a 5-speed. But that was actually I believe was a Dodge engine. And so my very first vehicle was a Dodge. But yes, it was imported by Mitsubishi, but it had the Dodge emblem on it, but it was sold at Dodge dealerships. That's back when mini trucking was cool. That's what I had.
Okay, so, and this thing is, everybody, the imagination is running wild about this class, and that's what's cool about it. That's what I like about it, and that's why we actually came up with this. You can see where Shane and I were when we were coming up with this idea for this class was like 333 cubes. What fits in there? Well, dang, Oldsmobile already makes a 330, right? And then it was like, well, Pontiac makes a 326, and then Chevrolet with a 327, Ford, you can make a 331 so easy, it's ridiculous. Mopar had the 318, 60 over or 100 over or whatever it is to take. I think it's 90 over to take it to a 4-inch bore. Isn't that what it was? That was the idea. So, I mean, we started kicking all this around, and it turned out like every manufacturer had something that was relatively close that could fit in this. AMC had a 343, right? They also had one that was like 304 that you could bore out, and then I think they all have the same crank.
Yeah.
So, but we were getting excited about this, and it's like, man, this could be really fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Okay, so Clayton's toolbox, how would you suggest adding weight? I need about 300 pounds to add. Remember, the weight that we're giving you is with driver. So if your car
and tank and fuel, remember, it's after the run.
Right. So if your car, let's say you said you had a 332 times 330, oh man, times 9. What in the world? Times 9. It would need to weigh about 3,000 pounds. We figured that's the minimum weight of the class, right? And then what we said, 3,000 pounds.
Yep.
Was the minimum weight of the class.
That's for the 28-10-5 tire. So if you're under 3,000 pounds, then you
eight and a half.
Yeah, you got to run the 26. So like it's delicious, and that's for like anyone who's like 333 cubes or 330 to 333. Because that's
hold on a second. No, he wouldn't have to add any weight. Look, that car.
What's his cubic
inch? 332. It would have to weigh almost 3,000 pounds. That's what the class was designed around.
Yeah.
Right. So if your car only weighs 2,600 pounds, right, it would have to weigh 2,600 pounds to have to add 300 pounds to it. Empty. You're saying that
you still have to put
remember it's with the driver. So I doubt it weighs 2,400 pounds with by itself.
Yeah, because Plan Z weighs that, and it's got holes everywhere. Yeah, so you're thinking about that. That's with the driver. So that means down the track after the run, you're still in the car. We jack it up, we put on scales, and we weigh you.
Mostly old parts. Ron Ward says, keep in mind a stock displacement 340 would only incur a 63-pound weight penalty. Yes,
exactly.
That was kind of the idea.
Yep.
You could go out. All right. So the idea really was you go to the junkyard, you find any manufacturer's engine, and you can put something together pretty hairy for fairly low buck, and then find a car to stab it in. Or if you already have one, even better.
Here's another thought. 68 Dart, right? A 68 Dart that you drive in your street driver. You have a 360, it's 30 over, that's your 367 cubic inches. Then so that means you got to weigh 3312. By the time you're in the car, you have just a small hoop in there because you're faster than 740, so you're going to have at least just a hoop in it. By the time you put all that stuff in there, you're right at 3,300 pounds. So you don't have to add anything. So this is basically, you're not stripping down the car. This is like, hey, this is my car weighs this with this engine. I'm good to go right now.
We actually kicked this around. The reason why it came up to 333 is because we figured the fastest the cars were going to run was maybe like a 660 at the most.
670s or yeah, six.
Right.
Yeah.
We figured most of them would fall around 670. Somebody will probably run a 660. You give it a couple of years, they'll probably be like in the 650s and 40s. But it still doesn't require all of the crazy safety measures. That's right. And that was the idea behind it. So and we were trying to keep them around that same ET. Uh, so
Yeah.
Dust
I
Devil
was,
Garage says, "Does anyone speak AMC performance, or is there such a thing?"
yeah,
Dude, they used to
I
have a
do.
pro stock AMCs run by Wally Booth, and they were badass.
The AMC heads flow better than most Chrysler heads. I could just tell you that.
Let's see, an AMC tunnel ram. They're out there. I know they made them. Um,
Mhm.
Wally Booth made a lot of parts to make the cars run. Matter of fact, he was. If you ever follow me like on Facebook, there's actually something that comes up every couple of years or every year when you get your anniversary. But about 2, 3 years ago, I had found this awesome picture where Wally Booth. It said, "You're not a hot rodder," or what did it say? Um, Wally Booth essentially sectioned his heads into three different pieces, right? Long ways on a bandsaw.
Mhm.
Okay. And then welded them back together to make a head for Pro Stock. These are cast iron heads that he cut longitudinally and then welded them back together. And it said, your idea of hot rodding and my idea of hot rodding are not the same. We are not the same.
Right?
It's like Wally Booth made his own cylinder head.
Yeah.
You bought a set of heads off the Summit, right? So
Hey,
uh,
go to Ron's question right below that.
what's that?
His statement. Yeah. So he's saying a stock 62 Valiant Signet 200 equals a 2750. And then you put a person in there, let's say 200 pounds. You're at 2950. By the time you put in, 10 gallons of gas, there's another 70 pounds. So you're creeping up on that number right off the bat. So yeah, and that's a 62 Valiant. If you ever seen those, they're really light, small vehicles. So yeah, 68 Dart. I know for a fact they're 32 to 3,300 pounds because I've got one. I weighed the damn thing before I took it apart.
Well, and then 38 Racing says, does the intake have to be a production item? Um,
Well,
I don't know what you mean by that. Are you making your own sheet metal intake manifold? I think we're
yeah,
not going to allow that.
no sheet metal intakes. But here's the thing, though, is that you can take a cast one, and modify it, but we're not going to have sheet metal tubes, just because we didn't want
Well,
to get out of hand.
yeah, the
You know.
genie will be out of the bottle, and you can't put it back in at that point.
Yes,
It's not
exactly,
going
and
to
that's
show
the
up
whole thing.
with a damn pro stock with a sheet
Yeah.
metal intake on it and just walk all over you.
Yeah, exactly. And for that reason, I don't know if you guys know this or not. I talked about it earlier. I'm not going to compete in this class. I'm actually going to help write the rules, and I'm going to enforce some of the rules, actually all the rules. But I'm not going to compete in this class because I have access to too much stuff, and I just didn't think it would be fair me writing the rules and then having access to all these parts. So
Well,
I'm going to take myself out of this.
here's one thing I'm kind of confused about, Shane. They keep talking about this 62 Valiant Signet thing, and I don't think any of them ever came with a V8. Weren't they slant six cars?
There was not six, but you could put a V8 in one.
Did they weigh 2750 with a V8 or with an aluminum slant six?
No, I think they were in 2650 with the slant six, like the regular cast iron slant six, because the aluminum ones only came in like the race ones.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but no, he is right. It's 2750 pounds, but you got to
With a
put a person
V8?
in it, huh?
With a V8?
They're light vehicles, man.
Well, I
Look
get
at
it.
one.
But I mean, the 65 Mustang, same way. It's the
Yeah,
same way. It's like 2,700 pounds with a 289 in it,
yeah.
right?
It's a
It's a light
super small
car.
car,
Yeah.
and the trunk is this little tiny, like they're the ugliest cars around. In
Yeah.
fact, my
Well, you're
wife
going to have
loves
to.
them.
All right. So you can run that, but it's got
Yeah,
to meet the minimum weight requirement for the cubic inch. I mean,
yeah.
it's the class minimum weight, I want to say, is 3,000 pounds. So if it doesn't fit the 3,000 pound criteria, it's not going to run.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, see, right there. Exactly. So if you go down, he was saying that our 62 Valiant at race weight with a driver was 2885. Yeah, so they're
hmm,
pretty light.
yeah, that is pretty light. So he's saying
Same
though
with
the 62
64.
came with an aluminum slant. The A body Mopar didn't have a V8 until 1964. That was
That's right.
273, right? That was
It was
the
the
um,
Barracuda. It's
Formula
64
S,
and a half,
right?
actually.
The Formula S cars.
Yeah, no, it was just a Barracuda, and it actually beat the pony car. It actually beat the Mustang by a few months.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
but
that's the big back window ones.
yeah, exactly. And so they're the 64, 65, and 66 are their like own little body, looking things, until they would change it in 67. But in 64, they actually beat the pony cars out, but then they called it the pony cars for whatever reason. I don't know why.
Because it's named after the Mustang, which had the
Yeah, I know,
long
but
hood and short trunk lid.
yeah, but the Mopars, not only did they beat them out there, but they beat them in every single race.
Well,
Before.
that was the thing. That's where SCCA Trans Am started. Was technically right there, like 64 with the Barracuda, the Valiant, and the Mustang.
Yeah.
Right? There was nobody else had anything. Chevrolet ran the Nova. See, what I'm wondering is how come nobody ever ran like that 63 Buick I got? Because it would have been in that same kind of category,
I don't know.
and
Probably no backing for it.
it would have been the
Back
same
then,
kind of.
Buicks were really
Oh, I know what
considered
it was.
race
No,
cars.
General Motors got completely out of racing in '63, like completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, Danny Boyd saying Corvair. No, that's a 6-cylinder.
Yeah, but you can use the derivatives like my '63 Buick and the Oldsmobile F85. It's the same body style. So, as the Corvair. All right.
Wow, it's almost 9 o'clock, man.
Yeah.
It went
Yeah,
fast.
it went super duper fast. Yeah, SCCA Falcons. There you go. That's what it would have been. Was like that. That would have been the small economy compact class.
Mm-hmm.
Sport compact, NASCAR sport compact racing with hyperpack 170 slant 6 ruled. And I'm sure it was the same way with like the little Buick specials with the 225 V6s in them, or you had there was a 180 or 190 V6 Buick that you could get in those things. But
I was Ron Ward DM me a picture here, and I'm gonna pull it up, and I'm gonna go full John Wilburn here. Oh,
well, LC2 Kid says Buick GS Nats dates have been posted. See you there, Dallas. I'm going to be there. I will definitely be there this year. So hopefully I have something that I can sell. And I'd like to run that 63 Buick.
yeah. Well, it didn't come through yet, Ron. Oh, maybe here it is. Yep.
Racing says, can I bolt the wheel cylinders to the 4.3 in our Corvair?
All right, we're going full John Wilburn here.
Valiant drag car.
And that's That's Ron Ward's.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That's really cool. But see,
Yeah,
that's the car my wife loves right there. She loves how the back end of the car looks.
fins, the fins. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
she loves those fins.
I guess you either love those or hate them. I always thought they were like the ugliest things ever.
Me too, and I'm a Mopar fan, but the wife loves it.
Well, and that's the thing is like you either loved them or hate them. Just like the Barracudas, like 67 through 69. I didn't know that there was people that hate that body style, and I absolutely think when I think of super stock, that's what I think of is those.
Yeah,
I think they're beautiful. That was like
Jo-
one of my first cars.
There was actually 2 of those right there at No Name Nationals. John's right. I actually lent my tires to one of them. Yeah.
Let's see. Oh yeah, here it is. Buick Smith says it was a 198 V6 and he had one of the 62 specials. So that would be kind of cool. But mostly all parts, Ron Ward says that's on a 9-inch tire. So if you were running that Valiant at in the 333 class, it'd be on an 8.5-inch tire.
Yeah.
Let's see. Blue Grit Garage says you could get a conversion kit to put 350 Chevys in the back seat of Corvairs. That'd be fine, but it needs to have the factory suspension pickup points or it ain't running. So I mean, you'd pretty much be out of that Corvair.
Yeah.
Oh, so that Virgil Exner design was that Valiant?
I don't know. That's beyond me. That's beyond my knowledge of those cars. It's
All right. Well, I guess we're winding down. We're getting to the end of the evening. We're an hour and 55 minutes in. We do appreciate everybody stopping by and checking in. Make sure you smash that like button on your way out or whatever you're going to do this evening. But that helps us get some more and more views every week. Hopefully, and if you didn't know this, there's generally like about 50 to 70 people that watch this a week. But it gets like 280 views per week. So a majority of them come after we've already finished the live.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. So just to let you know that.
Yeah, that is interesting because even when I was doing it on my channel, you'd have like 60 or 70 people watching it, but then afterwards you like at 300, like, are they really doing it that much after? But then you only have like 50 likes. So yeah, hit the like button if you like this kind of stuff. That's what keeps us going.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, other than that, though, I think we're going to go ahead and wind it down. Yeah, we're going to try to have you some rules for the 333 class before Thanksgiving.
Yep.
We're going to have to sit down and Shane and I on the phone and just draft up some rules and then put them in stone and throw them together for the 333 class. We hope you guys will join us on there. I think the first couple of years will be a lot of fun. It won't be so critical. After the first 2 years, it's probably going to get really critical. So just to let you know that's just how most things go.
The first year, get in and have fun. Second year, it's going to get a little bit more challenging. Third year, that's when it's going to be racing.
And I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say this. The payout to win the 333 class is never going to be money. Okay? I'm going to let you know that right now. I'm never going to throw money at it to make it a big time payout class because it's going to bring all the heavy hitters. So we'll come up with something else that it's probably just as good, if not better, than money.
Yep.
So that's the plan.
Don't forget to go see Mr. John Wilbur on his channel on Friday night at 7 p.m. Central, 8 o'clock was Eastern Standard Time, and on John Wilburn. And he says he's giving a T-shirt away on Friday on his channel. So how about that? He's giving away a T-shirt. And go check out right after him is Tony's Hot Rod Garage. And then on Tuesday nights, go see Buff Del Campo on theirs. They've always got something live. If you like late night, Buff Del Campo. They're up 10 o'clock they start.
Sometimes. Oh, well, Miss Kanji says that you're going to win fame in the 333 class. And there
you go.
You may get fame too, but there's going to be prizes. There's going to be winners benefits.
It's going to be fun.
It's good as money, but it's not money. The reason why I'm not throwing big piles of money at it is because it's going to bring all of the heavy hitters out and you won't have a chance to even compete.
Yeah.
So,
but I can tell you that there's going to be some cool giveaways and door prizes for people for winning. So I can tell you that for real.
Sweet. Mm-hmm. All right. So we'll see you cats on the flip side next week.
You guys take it easy.
All right. See you. We're out of here.